Thank you. Good evening. It's fantastic to see so many people here at the Swanage hustings and to see so many familiar faces as well. I'm Lloyd Hatton and I'm standing to be your next Labour Member of Parliament for South Dorset. I was born and raised in Weymouth and almost my entire family live either across in Weymouth or here in Swanage. I'm standing because I want to be a local champion for our community. I think we haven't had that for 14 years now. That's why I put myself forward in this election, so we can have a strong voice in Westminster. Now, I don't know about you, but for the last 14 years, it's felt like we've had endless chaos and endless division from a Conservative government. And while this has been going on, sadly, we've had an invisible MP in the constituency. That invisibility is all too clear this evening as we stand here, but sadly, he is not here to answer your questions and face scrutiny. Rest assured, if I am fortunate enough to be elected as your MP, I will always attend hustings, my door will always be open, and I will always answer the difficult questions. I suppose the most important thing about this election is that we do have a straight choice. Either 5 more years of the same with this local MP and with this Conservative government, or a fresh start with a local, hard-working, constituency-based Labour Member of Parliament who works hand in hand with a Labour government in Westminster. If I'm elected, I'll work on the issues that matter most to us, whether that's dealing with the cost of living crisis, rebuilding our National Health Service, or protecting our cherished local environment. I'm proud to call South Dorset home. I am rooted in this community, and that's why I'm standing. I'm standing to be your local champion and to give us all a fresh start on July the 4th. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me? I'm Joy Wilson, as I said earlier. I live in rural Purbeck, growing fruit and vegetables. Do you want to move it? Thank you. I grew up in a Christian family. It's my Christian faith that led me to start a pregnancy crisis centre, volunteer for crisis helpline, run a club for wonderful Down syndrome adults. I've spent 10 years as a single mum of 3 small children, 13 years working in central London with isolated older people, and I now look after my elderly mother. These experiences, and perhaps more so, the Bible, are what lead me to feel the call of God today to speak for those without a voice, especially the unborn. So I'm standing as an independent candidate with Vote Life, representing the voice of the unborn. All human life is sacred, it's given by God. The Bible says the Spirit of God has made me and the breath of the Almighty has given me life. Every unborn life is wanted and should be cherished and protected. And tonight you might think, why am I doing this? But you all are all here, the unborn, and not here. Or if they are here, they've not got a voice. And I'm going to try and be their voice, as weak as my voice is. Maybe, however much you might agree with abortion, I hope you'll also agree that the unborn deserve a voice. I'm standing with Vote Life, and Vote Life's policies are to repeal the Abortion Act of 1967 and abolish abortion in the UK. We must protect unborn babies as we would protect any other group of vulnerable human beings. Every year in the UK, around 250,000 unborn babies are intentionally killed in the womb. Since abortion was legalised in 1967, we have tragically ended 10 million lives, a number equivalent to the entire population of London. 1 in 4 pregnancies now ends in abortion. Let me make this clear, until we start protecting the vulnerable, the most vulnerable, including babies in the womb, our country has no future. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me all right? Okay. Hi everybody. So hello Swanage. I'm Giovanna Lewis and I'm standing as your independent socialist candidate for South Dorset. I've lived and worked in Dorset for almost 40 years. As a mother and grandmother, I wish to leave behind a safe, secure and sustainable world for our children and grandchildren. I'm a campaigner. I've campaigned to keep Portland Community Hospital and its services. I've been part of the Stop Portland Waste Incinerator campaign. I'm a frontline climate and social justice campaigner. And I'm a founding member and campaigner with a Portland Global Friendship Group. I don't know if you've heard of us, but we support the asylum seekers on that quasi-prison called the Bibi Stockholm, and we try to encourage community cohesion, men on the barge, people in the community. We get together, we have fun and do interesting things. I also campaign with my whole heart for a ceasefire in Palestine. I believe climate and social justice are inseparable, and climate justice is not possible under the present system as it challenges big business. I believe only serious taxation of wealth and individuals and corporations and an end to privatisation can fund the big improvements we need to do: housing, health, water, energy, nature loss, all of that stuff. Spending less on foreign wars and using those billions to lift people out of poverty could change the face of our country. There are exciting and inspiring political change happening across this country as more and more independent socialists come forward. I believe the right people in the right place with the right intention, that's important, can create the safe, secure and sustainable world we all yearn for. I believe what Gandhi said: the world has enough for everybody's need, but not everybody's greed. Thank you.
I'm going to move over a bit just to be on the safe side. Hello, so I'm Catherine Bennett. I'm standing for the Green Party. I am a local mother and worker, as in I work in this area too. I now work for an arts organisation called B-Side, which is very much involved with community culture and community arts, but for decades I've been in education. I've done prison education, I've done FE education, I've done university education, and I've also worked with children in alternative provision, as in the children that are not at school because they have been pushed out of school. For various reasons. Some were attendance team, some were SEN team, but it meant they weren't getting a full-time education. I seem to come from quite a family of people that seem to be able to get stuck into things when they see a need. My great uncle set up the Lantern Trust in Weymouth, and another relative is very involved with the No Fort and the Civic Society, and the No Fort's become this amazing sort of treasured local institute that it wasn't when it was a run-down old fort that no one really cared about and had lots of graffiti on it. It will be interesting to see if the same thing happens with Portland's and the high-angle batteries, although I'm secretly hoping it stays the ghost tunnels and still a place for local kids to party. I really want change and I want hope because I have a young child, and I want to honestly pass over to him that I've done everything I can as an individual, and I've encouraged everyone I meet and come across and have dealings with to do as much as they can for the community as well. I was involved with the incinerator campaign too. I spoke at the original hearing and then later on with the inspector. And when I saw that we had our winter of discontent coming 2 years ago, and we knew that all the bills are going up, things were going to get even worse than they were already, I set up a community fridge, which to me was a win-win because we were saving food that would go in the bin and we were also feeding people.
Good evening, my name is Matt Bell, standing with the Liberal Democrats. I have grown up in Weymouth. I'm 14 years into a teaching career, mostly spent in the South Dorset area. And I've come into politics partly through frustration at what was occurring and what I saw happening nationally, but also because I felt I could maybe represent and give a voice to the younger people in my school environment. That was the initial starting point. Since then, I've gone on to become a Weymouth Town Councillor. I'm also a Dorset Councillor, and I've been very active in campaigning on various issues, particularly around the environment in Weymouth, the River Wey, and the fact it's been neglected for quite a long time. The Radipole Lake, which is one of the largest lakes in the Unitary Authority area and hadn't really been touched. I've managed to get all the organisations back around the table for the first time in about 10 to 11 years, and there's now action happening. And I get a real buzz out of that. I get a buzz out of helping people who approach me with a problem and trying to find that way forward. And we've had some really, really big success with that recently through petitions, being on the radio, putting pressure on Dorset Council when it was under Tory leadership previously, and we've had some real success with that. I'm also Chair of Services in Weymouth, so I'm actively involved in running the council, leading the agenda and trying to make sort of forward progress for the people who need us, who rely on the council for various things. I'm also basically looking to focus on 5 key areas as I see them, which is growing the economy, making sure there's reasons for young people to stay here and find employment here, improving healthcare across the full age range, putting mental health on the same footing as physical health. Also the natural environment. I'm a geography teacher. It's very, very close to my heart. It's what I studied at university, and trying to push forward with preserving the amazing world-class environment and ecology we have in South Dorset. And finally, affordable homes need to happen. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rosie Morrell, and as I mentioned earlier, I'm an independent, but I'm co-founder and deputy leader of Britain's newest political party, Everyone is God. If I am elected, I will be the first sex worker to enter government, and I'm very proud of this. However, I am not only a sex worker, I am a sex therapist with advanced qualifications in therapy, a degree in psychology, and a postgraduate certificate in secondary education. My previous job was a secondary school teacher. I have taught in schools in South Dorset, Bristol and Somerset, and I've seen a lot of dysfunction in schools, which was one of the reasons why I left teaching. I've always been passionate about helping people and empowering people, having been brought up in actually very severe poverty myself. I've now got to a position where I feel empowered enough to run for government and stand for South Dorset as an MP. However, as passionate as I am about empowering people and giving every single person, not just in South Dorset, but in Britain, a sense of pride and belief in themselves, I actually don't believe the current systems we have in place will enable that. And this is why I'm sitting here in front of you today with my new political party, Everyone is God. We are a radical party, and we are about really getting to the root of problems and solving them from the ground up so they stop reoccurring decades down the line. I will welcome you after this to look at our policies on www.everyoneisgod.co.uk, and I look forward to answering your questions. Thank you.
We are turning to the questions that people have sent in. We're going to be reading them out. Quite a few were on different topics. We have chosen those that most were submitted about. So the first one we've got is about housing. So do you want to say which order after I've said the question? Okay, so this question is submitted by Sarah Vile, but is one of 4 to do with housing. She says, currently the cheapest property to buy in Swanage, which isn't a beach hut, a garage or a caravan, is a 25% shared ownership 3-bed home at £102,000, and there is one left for sale at Compass Point, although whether it's still there, I don't know. 25% of the homes in Swanage are second homes or holiday rentals, and 191 people in Swanage are registered as having housing need. Do you agree that Swanage is an absolute housing crisis where local people and key workers cannot afford to live here, and what are your plans you have for addressing it? Thank you.
To start us off, Giovanna, would you like to take your first answer?
Okay. Thrown in at the deep end, right, okay. You can hear me all right, yeah? So, you know, housing, we know, anybody with any brains knows it's a real crisis situation in our country, been made worse in the past 14 years. Second homes, I live on Portland. Sometimes it feels like Portland is full of second homes. You can always tell by the little, key code thing, can't you? It's either somebody elderly or a second home, and there are lots of them in some of the roads on Portland, and it's pretty shocking. We did a bit of research, and we came across some figures that were quite shocking, really, because housing is a problem all over the UK. And we found that the number of empty homes in the UK stands at around 1.5 million empty homes. Now, there's going to be a lot of reasons for that. It needs interrogating. But if you add that to the fact that there are 1.2 million people waiting on housing registers, it's appalling. One empty house that's not being used is too many, in my mind, when you've got homeless people and people in B&B. We also found alongside that, when we looked at where the money goes, that the Tory party in the last 10 years has had £60 million in donations from the property developers and construction company. We advocate that we will build, if I became an MP, I would be raising the banner for let's build council houses and social housing. People need long-term secure housing. Private rental is extortionate. At the moment, people have to leave within 6 weeks if they've got a no-fault eviction, and rents are extortionate. I just checked the price of a 3-bedroom small family home to rent on the island where I live, and it was £1,200 a month. Who can afford that? Thank you.
Lloyd Hatton.
Thanks, and thanks for your question, Sarah. I suppose, as I think the youngest candidate on the panel, I am part of what is lovingly called Generation Rent, which means that the idea of being able to save up enough for a deposit, get a mortgage, and get on the property ladder, it is a pipe dream at the moment. And it's been something that's allowed to spiral out of control for years now. So I suppose the short answer is, with a Labour government, Britain will start building again. We must build more homes so young people can realise the dream of home ownership. This isn't something that should die off with my generation. So how do we do that? We need to reform our planning laws to make it much easier to build homes on brownfield sites. There are plenty of them across South Dorset, and I think we can begin to build those homes. We must also reform our planning laws because we need to make it incumbent on developers that they build genuinely affordable homes. It is pointless building luxury flats on the seafront or very expensive 4- or 5-bedroom houses that young people simply cannot afford to buy. So we need to make it easier to build, and then we need to make sure we're building the right types of home for our community. I think Giovanna made a really good point. Right now, house prices and wages, they're just so far apart. We need to close that gap. I suppose the last thing I will say is second homes and holiday homes have got out of control. I don't think anywhere is that more the case than here in Swanage, where 1 in 4 homes are currently empty for a large part of the year. I want to bring in restrictions that will curb the number of second homes in our community. I don't want to see Swanage hollowed out simply because more and more of our streets become a haven for second homes. So they're my 2 priorities. Get Britain building again and curb the number of second homes in South Dorset. Thanks.
Matt Bell.
Thank you very much. I've seen the very real effects of people being made homeless at prime moments in their life. I had a Year 11 student this year who, due to the condition of their home, was looking at a home move out of the area during her GCSE exams. As her local councillor, I stood up and argued the case. But we should not be reaching those points where people are being moved out of their homes. So to put an end to that, we're arguing for 150,000 new social homes nationally a year. 380,000 homes in total each year is within our manifesto. Again, we want to look at the definitions of affordability and consider what is actually affordable, not what an accountant in Whitehall thinks is affordable. What can someone in our region afford based on the salaries in the area? We also want to ban no-fault evictions, make sure that people have that secure home that society is thrives upon. You need that security, you need that solid base to then build into the rest of your life and gain that social mobility that sadly is lacking in many parts of South Dorset. As well as that, on the second homes front, the newly run Lib Dem Dorset Council is already set to work on this. Actually in opposition, we managed to get through a policy where basically a portion of the second home council tax is ring-fenced for the development of affordable homes. So that is something we've already done. We're already actioning things. It's something we're passionate about, And it's something that now we have majority control at Dorset Council, we're going to push on with. We need the homes here to be filled. We need them because the people that live in them go and spend money in the shops. They go to the pubs and keep those community assets open. All the money that comes from people being here day in, day out, and we've got to get back to a situation where that is the case. We cannot go on as we are in Weymouth, Corfe Castle, Swanage, and widely across the area where so many homes are left empty for large portions of the year. Simply can't go on.
Thanks very much. Joy Wilson.
Thank you. I believe in dignity for all. I believe in life chances for all. We cannot look at the housing crisis without looking at the family and our approach to children and the home. With other multivariables, the housing crisis is made worse by abortion, which harms women, compounds oppression, and creates unforeseen and costly health and housing consequences, including poor mental health outcomes, future preterm delivery, addictions, breast cancer, suicide, and infertility. These things can contribute to extra demand for services, curtailing earning potential and other second-order effects. Also, in the UK, we currently spend 100 million on abortion every year, and that's your money, it's the NHS, it's with your taxes. If we defund abortion, you suddenly have more funds to truly help people live, and you can invest in more affordable housing, and you free up temporary accommodation for people on the streets. I agree that we should have we should ban no-fault evictions, and having to evict people from their homes is a terrible thing. But we do much worse, with over 800 babies in South Dorset being evicted from the womb intentionally, ending their lives, and that's putting it lightly. Thank you.
Rosie Morrell.
So I've been affected by homelessness. My parents were homeless when I was 5 years old, and for 8 years of my child life, I had no bed to sleep on, and I went to bed. I was hungry and cold a lot of the time. So I know this is a really big problem. I agree with Matt and Lloyd and pretty much everyone else on the panel here. We need to sort this out. We need to have affordable housing, and we need to stop second homes or put a limit on that, or possibly even fine people or do something about that. We also need to get to the root of the problem. So you give a man a fish and he feeds his family for a day. You teach him how to fish and he feeds his family for a lifetime. So we need to teach people not only how, to give them a house, but how to have money management, basically, which was the problem my parents struggled with. My father worked all of my life, but for some reason they couldn't manage their money adequately. If we can do that, along with fixing the housing issue, alongside encouraging people to live at home with their families. There's a culture in Britain where we feel that we have to move out. It's a bit sad living at home with your parents. There's nothing wrong with living at home with your parents, as long as you get on with them, of course. We need to encourage that. Family cohesion is very important. It takes a village to raise a child, and we need to encourage more of a community aspect to this problem. As I said before, everyone is God. It's about getting to root cause issues. So it can be deeper than just building affordable homes. It's about looking at the whole problem as a whole to fix this problem.
Catherine Bennett.
I will follow on from that in the sense that root cause is the fact that we sold off the council house stock in the 80s. We didn't replace them. That was actually the plan originally by Hatton, was that the money would be sent back to the local authorities, and then the local authorities could build more houses, and then they could be sold off and ad infinitum. But we need proper council houses. I grew up in one, I benefited from that system, and then obviously, same as everybody else, bought the house, never went back into the general housing stock for social housing, and it went on the market and ended up selling for silly money. So I saw the lovely council houses were probably one of the best views in the country as I was coming into Swanage. I always thought that, like, from when I was a child and we'd visit for day trips to Swanage, think they're really nice houses, they're better than ours. And they're beautiful, but of course they're not council houses now either, I'm sure. We need to build 150,000 new council houses a year, and we need to do those in the right places with the right infrastructure around them, just like they used to be done. There used to be this assumption there would be a community in those houses, and they were people's homes, they aren't just houses. Yes to end no-fault evictions. Yes to the fact that we need to improve our housing stock, so that's the existing housing stock and also anything that's built in the future, so that they are future-proofed and they are insulated and they are warm and they are comfortable homes for people. I've got this strange situation that I've rented for years, and actually I was homeless when I was at university, and then I have now got a home, and for various reasons, parents dying early, I have bought a second home since, as in I live in that home and I rent out the other one. Now I've rented out, it's a 3-bedroom house in Portland, the rent was £700, that hasn't gone up yet, but I've just had tenants move out, they've been there for 10 years, the only reason they've moved out is because the husband had Parkinson's. The point is, you can have good landlords and we need to encourage them rather than discredit all landlords.
Thank you, Catherine. We do need to move on. Thank you. Okay, that's the end of the first question. On to the second question. It's about health. We had lots of questions about this, so in the end we had to merge quite a few of the questions together. So hopefully this works as a question for you. There are a few parts to it, so please answer what you can. Specific mention in the questions was made for Swanage having no available NHS dentist appointments or availability. The nearest A&E is in Poole, which is also under the threat of closure within the next 2 years. Many outpatient clinics have also been withdrawn from local hospitals, and the local GP practices in Purbeck are struggling due to escalating workloads, shrinking workforce, and underfunding. So what are the candidates and their parties proposing to do to help local NHS services survive the unsustainable pressures that they're under? A good start. Let's start with you again, Catherine.
Okay, right. So I asked some people that I know in my family, my sister-in-law and a very close friend as well, what they thought should happen with the NHS. And sorry, I'll move closer to the microphone. The big thing was that we need to end privatisation that has been going on wholesale since Major into Blair, and then further into under COVID it went on a pace. And we need to end that, because we're paying more for everything that the NHS buys, we're paying more for training, we're paying more for staff, that a lot of them are agency staff, we're paying more for buildings, we're paying more for everything in the NHS, and that's a huge problem. My sister-in-law, who's an anaesthetist at the Isle of Wight Hospital, she said the big issue is social care, because it's basically failing because the beds are getting blocked, the ambulances are getting blocked, and then they can't get more people in. And we need maybe something like the cottage hospitals of old, where people could recuperate in the community, in their own communities, and then they would be able to return home. The Greens see that health and social care are not two separate issues and two separate solutions, they are one and the same, and I think that's key. She also talked about sometimes this idea that you have maybe staff could have quicker access to getting into the NHS and getting treated, because believe it or not they don't, and that would mean that you get a lot more staff retention. It'd be quite a perk to the job, but it would also mean that they're back on the wards as soon as possible. And also we are in a situation where we have lots of locum doctors that the service can't afford to pay and get into work, But then we also are desperately crying out and asking people to come to the country and work in the service, even though now we're not seen as a place to come to. We're seen as a place to come and move on as soon as possible. The UK is no longer a place where nurses from all around the world want to come and work. It's not seen as the service that it was, and we need to change that, and we need to change it urgently.
Thank you very much. Rosie Morrell.
So the health service is a massive issue that affects everybody. Basically, we believe that there's a lot of inefficiency in the NHS. There's a lot of admin staff that possibly are causing a lot of inefficiency, where there could be a lot of more money being saved. And if we can make it more efficient, that means it will free up more money for doctors and nurses and essential care workers that are needed in the NHS. So this is what we have a policy, everyone is God, that we will address these problems and really cut industries that are they're losing money and being inefficient. This will free up a lot more money. But also, I'm passionate about everyone being empowered with their own health, and just doing 10 minutes of meditation a day not only improves your well-being, but it's scientifically proven to reduce the risks of cancer and heart diseases. And so I'm a massive advocate of just finding that time, because even if you're stuck on a list, you can find 10 minutes to meditate. And I do YouTube channels to meditate. So I'm really passionate about people being empowered with what they can do in the very moment now, even if you can't wait. You know, you can use that to get through. Thank you.
Joy Wilson.
Thank you. The NHS should not be 99% funding the multi-million-pound abortion industry. I would Vote Life would look again to put babies and actual maternity support at the heart of the NHS policy. The NHS should not supply state-funded abortion, which is not healthcare, because it's only successful if one human dies. It runs contrary to the Hippocratic Oath and harms women. I agree that access in Swanage's local access is so important, and I would agree that we should get the Swanage A&E hospital reopened to improve local health outcomes. Sorry. I want to also address the inconsistency in language. So when in health services, when a baby is wanted, it's great, it's called a baby. When it's not, it's called a fetus or a pregnancy. That is this inconsistency, and we need to be consistent in the way we understand human rights, specifically the right to life from conception to natural death, and a commitment to protecting the most vulnerable amongst us. Thank you.
Matt Bell.
Thank you very much. You may well have picked up on our national campaign that the Lib Dems have put the NHS front and centre. That partly comes from Ed Davies' own personal experiences as a carer. I lost my parents in my early 20s to cancer. I was doing my teacher training at the time. I was dashing between work and all the stress that brings as a young adult, and both my parents had terminal cancer at the time. It made me realise how lucky I was that I did have a lot of family around. I did have support. Most of the time my bosses were considerate. But there are lots of people, and I've seen this with very young members of my school community, where they aren't given the support they need. So we've put social care right at the front of all our thinking. And as has been said already, if we boost social care, we improve carer pay, we improve access to personal care, then we take some of the pressure off the NHS. So social care needs to be the starting point, not the end point. We need to put it front and centre and take the pressure off the NHS. With regards to GPs, dentists and pharmacies, a lot of the professionals I've spoken to, the healthcare professionals I've spoken to, have talked about the fact that the central contracts quite often don't make it an appealing prospect to them as a professional. So, for example, pharmacies, the central pharmacy contract wasn't inflation matched. There was no premise of the idea of actually protecting these wonderful professionals that keep us all healthy. All these things need to be reviewed urgently so that we can bring an end to the dental deserts that we're experiencing in Dorset and elsewhere in the country. My cousin's a doctor. She's slightly younger than me. She's in her early 30s. And most of her peers have left the country. They get better offers from Australia, New Zealand, and many other countries. We've got to make it an appealing career. We've got to make it somewhere where they want to stay to carry out that career once they've had the world-class training that we still provide in this country. But we need to keep them here and not let them go elsewhere.
Lloyd Hatton.
Thank you. I mean, it's certainly one of the issues that comes up time and time again on the doorstep is the sense that our National Health Service, our cherished National Health Service, is crumbling. And sadly, Swanage is not exempt from that. I literally was having a conversation with somebody here in Swanage this afternoon, and they said, I cannot for love nor money see a National Health Service dentist. It is impossible, and it's the same for my children. So Labour have been very, very clear. We will embark on the largest frontline workforce expansion of the National Health Service since it was set up, so we can employ more GPs and more NHS dentists. And I will make sure, if I'm fortunate enough to be your MP, that we get our fair share of those additional doctors and dentists. Then we can get the appointments we need, so you don't have to have the 8 a.m. scramble and you don't have to wait weeks and weeks for an appointment. Now, I think one of the other big issues for Swanage is the future of Swanage Community Hospital. Thankfully, the Labour councillors here in Swanage have done sterling work standing up for Swanage Community Hospital year in, year out. But we must go further. I would like to see the walk-in element of our MIU restored. I'd like to see the rheumatology clinic restored at Swanage Hospital. I'd like to see the chemotherapy clinic restored at Wareham Hospital. I'd like us to expand the mental health and outpatient services that are also offered at Swanage Community Hospital. In short, if I'm fortunate enough to be your MP, I will be an ardent defender of Swanage Community Hospital. I do not believe healthcare should be pushed further and further up the road. I believe wherever it can be done in Swanage, it should be. Having healthcare on our doorsteps really matters. My grandparents, who live just up the hill, they're getting on in years, and they rely on that hospital, and they do not want to see it whisked away. If I am the MP, I will make sure it is firing on all cylinders.
Giovanna Lewis.
Thank you. Okay, is that working? Can you hear me? It's kind of a bit dodgy, isn't it? Okay, so the real problem with our NHS system is that it's being Americanised and privatised. And anybody who's campaigned in the NHS, like I have with a few people here, we've seen that. The integrated care boards that run our health services regionally have private influences on them. The private sector, they love the routine work, you know, the planned operations, that sort of thing, the monitoring. Have you noticed your monitoring going up for diabetes? I have. That's the work they love because that's the profitable work. The unprofitable work are the A&Es and the MIUs and the doctor's surgeries because they can't plan that, so they need a good sort of comprehensive set of staff and equipment ready for whatever happens that day. That's not profitable. And I believe that's what's behind these reductions. I truly believe that. And hospitals are being reshaped. We're having less A&Es, and then all of a sudden some hospitals are becoming for planned care only. The American private healthcare industry loves that. So does the British. We've also got another problem because a shed load of our MPs on both sides of the political parties are raking it in from American lobbyists and fees. You only have to go on some of these internet sites, both sides of them, ministers, shadow ministers. If we want dentists, sorry, there's so much to say here, isn't there? I was part of Keep Front Hospital campaign. A few years ago, over 80 community hospital beds went, and a few hundred acute beds went. This is the Americanised system, they hate it. There's loads more I could say, but keep fighting for the NHS.
Thank you very much. Our third question comes from Linda Welsh and is about policing. So it's obvious that towns like Swanage have been badly affected by the centralising of policing, leaving rural areas with little or no police and a target for shoplifters, burglars and other criminal activities. The designated response teams for Swanage are from Blandford and Ferndown. There have been many occasions when it's taken hours for a response officer to attend, and quite often the caller has been told that there isn't anyone available anyway. What will the policy of each candidate's party do to rectify this huge mistake and restore towns like Swanage with a full-time police station? Plus, will any of the parties be brave enough to do away with the political post of police and crime commissioners, an expensive post that's cost Dorset alone in excess of £2 million from the Dorset police budget?
Let's start with Matt Bell.
Well, let's start with a very easy section for the Lib Dems. We are dead against the police and crime commissioners and have been for a very, very long time. There is no place for politics in the running of our local police service. It needs to be got rid of. That money can be used far better, get more police on the streets, get more community action ahead of the crimes. There's so many ways that money can be used better, and also let's take the political influence out of those day-to-day decisions of the running of our local police force. We are basically going to attempt to bring back community policing. It's a hard thing to do. We've got to make sure that we bring communities with us on that journey. That is going to take time to build back up, and that's something that we're going to have to put the training in. We're going to have to get the police back out on the streets and build those relationships again that have sadly been lost. That idea that you'd walk around the street, you'd recognise the policeman, oh, I'll just tell you something while I'm here. That idea, that feed of information, that safeguarding that the community did for itself, fed into the police through a natural process, that needs to come back. We do it within schools. We have safeguarding processes where we talk across agencies, and that's happening in the background, but there's still a missing link there. We need to get the community back involved, not just have the professionals picking it up where we can, but get the public confident speaking to their police force again. Burglary is a massive problem. One of my best mates is the farmer on the Ridgeway on Weymouth. He owns 7 farms as part of a kind of group of farms he's put together with his family. They just don't get responded to. They've had thousands, tens of thousands of pounds worth of machinery stolen. No one turns up. They get told to take a photo, take the VIN number or whatever it is off the chassis, report it through to your insurance. Here's the police code. That isn't dealing with crime. That's just kicking it down the road until the next crime happens. So we need to be proactive, get the police out there, recognise that rural crime is an issue as well, and really, really get that community link with the police going again and get rid of that crime commission.
Thank you very much. Giovanna Lewis.
Okay, hi. So with all of our, can you hear that? Yeah. I can't hear it resonating. With all of our public services, we don't have enough staff to do the jobs they want to do. A lot of these people that work in our services want to do good jobs. So we definitely need more police. Was it 20,000 that the Tories got rid of and then said they would replace? They do that in a lot of the public services. Get rid of people, then say they're re-recruiting them. We need bobbies on the street in communities. There's no doubt about that. But we also need to look at what are the causes of these crimes. And we know that when poverty rises, when the cost of living crisis comes, when you have no youth clubs, when you have no family support, when you have drug addicts abandoned on the roads and not being treated as people with health problems, you will have a rise in crime. So we need both. We need more policemen, but we need a more compassionate, socially cohesive and supportive society. How many youth clubs have you got here? You know, in a population of almost 70,000 in Weymouth, I think we've got 2 decent ones. We've got a couple of other little things. What have you got here? You know, let's get the kids off the street. So I think that's about all I need to say. When you phone the police, it's a bit like phoning NHS 111, isn't it? You know, you wait and you wait and you wait. We need more staff, bobbies on the street, and we need the funding to go with it. Thank you.
Rosie Morrell.
So this is another thing I'm passionate about, having been harassed recently and the police are taking ages to deal with it, and I'm actually feeling like a real victim, even though I hate feeling like a victim. We need to sort this out. So basically, again, we're about going to root cause. So first of all, we want to bring in a supreme law policy where even being rude, so these things are the thin edge of the wedge of massive problems, and it starts with things like cyberbullying, things like this that create massive, that we sweep under the carpet but lead to massive dysfunctions in our society. And we really want to get to those problems. We also want to make the perpetrators of crime pay fully for their crime. So it's self-funding. So it's not the victims and the taxpayer aren't paying, because that is not fair. And so we need to change our economies to make that possible. And I haven't got enough time to go through how we can do that, but it's all on our website. We also need to get to the root cause of problems in another way by looking at parenting. So yes, Giovanna's right. We need to give more. We do need more youth places and things for the youth, and definitely supporting parents. But we also parents are 80% of the impact of children. 20% it comes from teachers and other care providers. If we get parenting wrong, this is where crime starts, and we really need to address these problems. We would need to start fully supporting parents and regulating it so that parents feel that they are a network and they're not just left, and we're looking after children. They're not getting looked after well at the youth care, but then they're going home and being abused. Sorry, thank you.
Lloyd Hatton.
Thanks for the question, Linda. I think we should start with that point about what was once sort of Swanage's police station. I think it was pretty dire that what our current MP did when it came to, we first lost the police station, and now we've got this kind of half version of a police desk. I think it makes absolutely no sense that this Conservative government cut 20,000 police officers and they went, oh, crikes. Crime's going up, there aren't enough police on the street, we better start a rapid employment of police officers. We should never have cut them in the first place. I noticed Matt said, I will attempt to return to neighbourhood policing. I suppose that's the big difference. If I'm fortunate enough to be your Labour MP, I will work hand in hand with a Labour government and we will deliver a full return to neighbourhood policing. So every single community, Swanage and the rural areas of Purbeck, have their own visible police officers that they know and that are embedded in the community. That is something a Labour government will deliver. And finally, I'd just like to say, I think it's really, really worrying that actually rural crime is a kind of invisible issue and it is essentially given a free pass, which is why Labour have put forward a bold plan to have the first ever rural crime strategy. It needs to be dealt with differently to ASB on a Friday and a Saturday night. It is a different set of problems and it requires a different set of solutions. That's why I'll work with Labour ministers to make sure that we have a rural crime strategy that responds to the needs of South Dorset. I think the Conservatives have long claimed to be the party of law and order. They have abandoned that mantle. If I'm fortunate enough to be your MP, I'll make sure we take this issue deadly seriously.
Catherine Bennett.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things have been said, hasn't there? There's that obvious... Is it safe? There's that obvious link between the causes of crime, which are manifold, but within reason. We can talk about our inequality crisis that we have in this country, that we have now more billionaires, 171 compared to 29 back in 2010. We've had all the causes of crime going up with the fact that you will decimate youth services, you've created almost a society of fear that we expect there to be crime as well, and sometimes people need a bit more truth and a bit more facts and figures about what actually is the situation. It's still young men that are most likely to be victims of violent crime. I would say that I do empathise with the fact that you don't have a proper police station in Swanage. I live in Portland and we have a population of 13,500. We don't even have a desk. We just have people that come over from Weymouth when they want to. But what we do have is some really good youth workers, and that combination of working with the local officers and working with the youth workers is essential. We also need to work with any groups that work with older people as well, and thinking about how people feel safe in their communities. Do women feel safe to go out at night? Do they feel safe to go out during the day? So I think we need to push and spend money. We need bods, we need actual people on the ground that know their community. We need people to feel that there's a presence and they're listened to. If you report a crime, are you rung back? Would you just get a number? I think it's all those particular things where people feel not only that they are listened to, but also that there is actually something being done, and we've failed on that count miserably, I'm afraid.
Thank you. Joy Wilson.
Thank you for the question. I agree with the panel on a lot of what they've said about the police, and I agree that there should be no politics in policing, and that police should focus on crimes and real crimes, not thoughts and ideas, and they certainly shouldn't be policing Christians praying in their heads. And if we did away with buffer zones around abortion clinics, that would save a lot of the police's time and money. I also believe as a Christian that the gospel is the answer to every one of the nation's problems, but especially crime. And you might not believe in God, but God through Christ offers every broken, angry, hurting person a clean start, forgiveness, and the power to transform their lives. There are many people in the audience tonight, perhaps, who would tell you that Christ turned their life around. I'm part of Perfect Gateway Church, and as a church, we're committed to taking the gospel onto the streets, because that's the message of God's grace, love, and forgiveness, and it is the answer to crime. It's tragic that 244 young people were killed by knives between March 22 and 23. We lament and mourn their loss. But let's not forget that for every child that was violently killed last year, 1,000 unborn babies were killed. Perhaps if we stopped killing our children in the womb, we'd have more moral authority to tell violent gangs to stop doing the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So the next question was submitted by Peter Jacobs, and he said that Dorset Council figures reveal that 11 areas in the county are within the top 20% nationally for multiple deprivation, up from 10 in 2015. Some areas of South Dorset, the House of Commons Library constituency dashboard reports that absolute child poverty exceeds 20%. Food banks and mobile larders are used across South Dorset by hundreds of families, and as our MP, what would you do to help end the poverty crisis in South Dorset? We'll start with Rosie Morrell.
So, as I mentioned earlier, this is something very close to my heart, and I, as I've already said, I grew up in poverty, and the thought that there are still 1 million children in Great Britain today without a bed to sleep in at night just makes me want to cry every single night. So I really, really want to change this. I want to have a valued wage instead of a minimum wage. I want to increase the minimum wage, but change it to a valued wage, so people feel valued when they're working. Also, we want to fully support parents. Because parents are struggling with trying to manage a job and parent and trying to feed their children. So if we support them, and it means really changing the tax system so that actually we get to a point where parents can be paid so they don't have the pressure of working, and they can really look after their children and no child will be in poverty if the parents are given a proper value of money for parenting. We also want to re-educate children and adults on how to manage money, because this is a serious issue with poverty. Like I said, my father was in work like all of my life, and we were homeless at one point. Why is that? It's because he didn't know how to manage his money, and this is a serious issue, so we need to sort that out. So we're, like I've said before, we're about root cause and getting to the root problem and actually diminishing these problems for good. It can take some time, but with us all working together, it can happen.
Matt Bell.
Thank you very much. Hopefully you can hear me. Mic's been rejigged. I work in a school within South Dorset as a very, very divided demographic, extreme wealth, multi-millionaires on one side, and then two of the areas of high multiple deprivation sit within our catchment. So I see the effects of this every day. I have chosen in my career to go down the path of being like a head of year, dealing with the social side of things rather than the head of department. And we've got to make sure that the very basics are there for children so that they can make the most of their school day, get the education, get the qualifications that give them the access to make those changes in life moving forward, to adjust that social mobility for them as an individual but also for their family. We know that patterns form in families. Once you have people gaining higher qualifications, it becomes the norm in the family and it progresses from there, opening doors throughout their life. Within the Lib Dems, we've got plans to make sure that every school day is a successful school day, or as successful as it possibly can be. One of the biggest bits for me is getting a mental health practitioner in every school. That's going to be funded by a tax on digital services, who many would say social media is contributing in a big way, and I certainly would from my professional experiences. Lots of our young people from the areas of deprivation have ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, could be alcoholism in the family, drug use, whatever it may be, a lack of food in the cupboards. That brings baggage, it brings issues they arrive in school with that prevent them from accessing the learning in the same way I was lucky enough to. I had a safe home. I knew I was going back to a safe home. I knew I was going back to a dinner on the table. So one of our other things is to ensure that all young children have the adequate nutrition they need to access and gain those, that ability to access social mobility and move up in what they can achieve. And part of that is rolling out free school meals to a wider range of population and eventually across the next Parliament, getting that to all primary school children in England. And that would make a huge difference, setting the day off on the right foot, allowing them to access learning and get the qualifications they need.
Catherine Bennett.
Okay, I've got to try and make sure you can hear me this time. Okay, I live in one of those pockets of deprivation. My son is growing up in one of those pockets of deprivation. And we have a completely unequal society. We have a crisis of inequality. We talk about the cost of living crisis, but it is an inequality crisis. So we need to do certain things. We need to think about the fact that we have a gig economy, or we have also jobs that are short-term, or they're very much low wages, and sometimes they're actually under the minimum wage people are being paid. I believe a certain MP was actually in trouble a few years ago because it was proven that one of his companies were paying people under the wage they were meant to be paid. We need to have £15 an hour at least for everyone. You can't survive on less than that, not in any meaningful way. We need to make sure that people have those houses, so those building of those social houses, those council houses, so people do have a home to grow up in. There are 130,000 children that are growing up in temporary accommodation. You can't do anything unless you do have that stability that Matt's talked about. And then also comes with that comes a confidence and a sense of yourself and a sense of pride. And if you don't have that, it's very difficult to learn. And I worked with adults that were coming back into education because their childhood had meant they had failed educations and they were trying again with literacy and numeracy. We need to make sure that pensioners are keeping up with the pace of wage increases. We need to get rid of our bedroom tax. We need to increase disability by any payments by at least 5%. We need to abolish that 2-child benefit cap. That will bring 250,000 children out of poverty. We can build a solid base for society and take it out of poverty if we do these measures. And we can pay for that with a wealth tax. So those millionaires with their asset wealth, we can charge them 1% on that asset wealth. Billionaires, we can charge them 2% on that asset wealth. That isn't their earnings, that is their asset wealth. And we can then start to play with things with carbon tax and other things that will
Thank you
enable
very
us
much,
to spend
Catherine.
the money that needs to be spent.
Giovanna Lewis.
Thank you. Is that working? I never think it is. Oh, got it then. Thank you. I can look over there now because they've changed this. So, yeah, your deprivation figures are interesting, Mr. Jacobs. Ours are a little bit different. You know what it's like when you look for stats, you always get different ones. So we had in 2010, child poverty was at 20%, and it's now running at 30%, more or less. In Dorset, we've got figures of 35% across the board, and in some areas 43%. So you've probably got that somewhere in Swanage. We've definitely got it in parts of Portland. It's pretty shocking, isn't it? The government keep telling us we're so rich and everything's doing so well. I mean, you know, it's crazy. We also know that 1 in 6 pensioners are living below the poverty line. So I would advocate for at least a £15 an hour minimum wage. I like the idea of a universal basic income. That could be explored. We definitely don't want any more benefit reductions or sanctions. That's just appalling. I can't stand food banks because I think people should have enough money to go to the shops and have the dignity of buying their own food and not go like beggars to food banks. But what do the Tories do? They love food banks. They love nothing better than poor people donating to poor people. I know some rich people donate as well, but it's generally poorer people that donate. The two-child benefit. Can I just tell you one thing that I did as a Portland Town Councillor with a couple of other good socialist councillors? We introduced the free school meals scheme. We put the precept up a little bit, and every school holiday we could give vouchers to parents with children on free school meals so they could afford a little bit more.
Joy Wilson.
Thank you. I grew up in poverty, so I can relate to the question, and thank you. And as Vote Life want to remove the conditions for that make abortion attractive. So we would agree that there should be child benefit for every child, and it's interesting just looking at the stats in Scotland that I find them. I lost it. But there's a much higher abortion rate amongst women in Scotland that are poor from a poverty background. So, and I would also say that we should stop paying 100 million to the abortion industry for abortion, and that would say in our taxes, and that would release a lot of money to be spent supporting women and children. Thank you.
Lloyd Hatton.
Thanks for the question, Peter. I suppose to get to the nub of it, under 14 years of Conservative rule, we've seen the biggest fall in living standards in probably anybody here's lifetime. That's why we have a skyrocketing number of food banks. It's why we have the larder here in Swanage. We're really fortunate that there are people in this community who are willing to run such an essential lifeline, but it shouldn't need to be there in the first place. The last Labour government, tackling poverty, tackling inequality, it was in our DNA. We introduced the minimum wage to finally start making work pay. We introduced child tax credits, which lifted 1 million children out of poverty. And we set up the Sure Start centres, which ensured that young families from a deprived background got the resource and the help that they needed. So I suppose it's now down to the next Labour government to reverse the fall in living standards. And if I'm fortunate enough to be your MP, I want to play a key part in that. First of all, it starts with a new deal for working people. So people cannot be in work and in poverty. If you are in work, your wages should be able to keep up with the pace of living. You should be able to provide for yourself and for your family. And secondly, we do need to make sure that child poverty is a thing of the past, which is why Giovanna spoke of that really good policy in Portland. A Labour government will make that a national priority, and we will introduce breakfast clubs in every single school in England and Wales, which means that we can finally start to bear down on child poverty in this country. That is the difference between a Conservative government and a Labour government, one that is happy to let inequality spiral out of control, and one which will make it its life's work to tackle it, reduce it, and move on from the stain that is child poverty. Thank you.
Thank you. Our fifth question touches on some things that we have briefly mentioned, but this one is more specifically about youth. So the question is from Katie Langdon. My question, she writes, is centred about young people because I believe not enough is being done for them in South Dorset. In the past 14 years, education and youth services have faced increasing cuts. As well as this, the COVID-19 pandemic exacerbated the struggles for young people, leaving them with less and less opportunities. So if you were elected, how will you change life for young people?
Start with Joy Wilson.
Thank you. Well, as you know, I'm here speaking for the unborn, and the thing we would do to change life for the young people, the unborn who are waiting to be young people, is we would repeal the 1967 Abortion Act. I'd also say that we need to give young people things to be proud of in this nation. And if you think about in times past, there were even from here, you've got Thomas Chadwick, who rescued Jewish children in the war, and we can be very proud of him. So we need to have heroes that are doing good, brave and courageous things. And just know that as Vote Life, we value children, we value young people, and we also want young people to have a future and a hope. But if we continue to kill our next generation through abortion, 250,000 abortions a year, where are the future scientists, the mathematicians, the future doctors, where are they? Thank you.
Catherine Bennett.
Okay. Well, again, yes, it's something that's very dear to me with my background in education, but also obviously having young family. No, we are not supporting our young people enough. We are not providing a decent education for them. We are not preparing them for the future, and we're not doing enough now so they have a future. We need to do so many things, it's almost overwhelming, but you've got to be a pragmatic optimist, I think. Yes, we need to spend money on youth services, they're really key. We need to spend money on not just buildings of schools, but obviously look at the whole curriculum and the way it works, and the SATs, and all the system of taking the childhood out of children and not preparing them as well for the future, the kind of education they need. They need to maybe be able to do the new natural history GCSE that you can't do anywhere. I've inquired all the schools around us, none of them do it even yet. But why aren't we preparing them with actual life skills as well, but also political knowledge, economic knowledge, and obviously knowledge to actually grow food, understand about food and how it's produced, and what we need to do now and into the future to make sure that we keep a healthy planet to live on. We need to think about what the places we live in, what they have for children. We need bus services so the children on Portland, for instance, can get to FE colleges, get to their apprenticeships, get to even higher education. There is no real decent higher education in this area at all. We've got to go to Bournemouth or Exeter, and that is putting a huge strain on younger people and where they go. I think there are so many things that can be done that will make life better for young people. I think you've got to talk about the mental health services and how poor they are, and just how many children now are accessing the school mental health teams and CAMs, and how underfunded they are. If you don't feel positive about yourself, you can't be positive about your future. And I think the way we need our young people is to feel more genuinely respected and loved and cared for, and we're not providing that in our society at the moment.
Thank you very much. Lloyd Hatton.
Thanks for the question, Katie. I suppose as the only person on the panel who's still in their 20s, I suppose I do qualify as a young person. And I grew up here in Weymouth, or crossover in Weymouth, and you were told by parents, by teachers, by friends, You want to get on, you want to get a well-paid job, you want to go somewhere, you want to be successful, get on the train and get out of here. And that is terrible, and it has in no way been addressed over the last 14 years. So I suppose I want to turn that on its head. I want to say, if you are a young person growing up here, what can you do? What can we do to ensure that you want to stay here, put down roots, and make a success of yourself? So for me, there are 4 simple things that we need to do. One is we need to make South Dorset a green jobs hub. I believe that we can have highly paid, skilled green jobs in the green economy in our area. We can attract people and keep young people working here. I think we need to make sure that we have 6,500 extra teachers and a mental health support staff in every single primary and secondary school. That is what a Labour government will deliver. I think it will help to ensure we have a world-class state education here in South Dorset. I think we have to get housing right. We touched on it earlier. Until we have genuinely affordable homes in our community, then young people will keep being pushed out because they simply cannot afford to stay and put a roof over their head. And finally, actually, I agree with what you said, Catherine. I think having a higher education or a further education option closer to home would be a great way that we can keep young people here and make sure they feel like they have a future. I would be so proud if in 5 years' time, and we had a Labour government, I could walk into the secondary school that I went to in Weymouth and say, you're about to leave secondary school, kids. What are you going to do, and is it going to be in Weymouth? And they would say, yes, yes it is. I think that is the future we're aiming for. We need to give people a reason to stay and a reason to put down roots.
Rosie Morrell.
So, a great question, thank you. So we, as mentioned before, we've got a parenting policy where we really want to fully support and regulate parenting, which helps support young people. We also want to restructure the whole education system. So we want children to start school actually later at 7 years old. This because their primary years are crucial. There's so much psychological evidence that shows children who are with their families for longer develop better as adults. So we want to start children at 7, and also we want to change the education system so it's less focused on academia. We have a policy called Everyone is Intelligent. We believe that all people have something they are brilliant at, and it is not necessarily some form of academia, which we currently have in our system, that if you're good at STEM subjects, maths, English and science, all of a sudden you can get a job in anywhere. This totally diminishes a lot of children's self-confidence and belief in themselves that they can achieve what they want. We also need to create the relationships with elderly and young people so that children want to stay with their families and they want to be part of the community instead of being on the streets and being out maybe doing things they shouldn't be doing. So those are things that we need to teach not only young people but adults as well, about building those relationships up with our young people. So that's it. Thank you.
Giovanna Lewis.
Okay, so on Portland Town Council, I was slightly involved in the Portland Youth Council, and my influence was, let's make sure some of the poor kids get in on that, not just the high flyers, and that happened. And that was quite good, because it was quite self-empowering for them to learn how councils run and et cetera, We do not have enough youth clubs. We don't have enough youth workers. 2 great youth clubs that I work with, the Drop In and Steps in Weymouth, Drop In on Portland, they have to apply for grants endlessly. They have to beg, for these grants. Brilliant youth workers who should be spending time with the kids. Instead, they're doing all this administration to get this paltry amount of money, and they're competing with each other. Youth Club A gets it, Youth Club B loses out. They should all get it, and they shouldn't have to beg for it in the form of spending hours and hours to apply for grants. What else did I put here? Wouldn't it be great if we had something like a Dorset University? That would bring money in, it would bring innovation in. We could have lots of different studying for lots of people. People would come from around the world. I think any future government Are you listening, Lloyd? We need a Dorset University.
Glad you agree with me.
Well, you didn't say university, you said secondary school. Well, I didn't hear you say university.
Definitely.
If you did, I'm sorry. Okay. But we need to train youth workers. We don't have them, there aren't enough of them, and we need to train them. Because without good youth workers, youth clubs won't run. And we also need to train people for those practical skills, as you said over there, carpenters, builders, I don't know, the whole lot, electricians. It goes on, doesn't it? But we need money.
The wage for youth workers is £13.10 an hour.
Well, that's absolutely shocking, isn't it? No, I think,
I'm just about to go for a job myself.
is it really? I think the two I know get a bit more, but then they probably manage it. But anyway, yeah, we need money, money, money. Tax the rich.
Thank
They've
you
got
very much.
plenty.
Matt Bell.
Thank you very much for the question. This really is the reason why I do the job I do and why I've chosen to enter sort of council work and moving up the chain through politics. If I'm lucky enough to win the election on July 4th, this is my passion. I've written down a little list here. I've got F40. We are incredibly poorly funded per child, basically. We need to get the UK government to value children here like they do elsewhere. We do not get the same funding per head here as they do in much of the country. That has to be the starting point. From that, we can then start building the schools up into the quality that they need to be. The one I'm in, and my bosses wouldn't mind me saying this, it needs money thrown at it. I've been lucky enough in my professional life, I come and visit schools in the Swanage area, and you've got some nice new build ones, or relatively new build versus the one I find myself in. Being in a good working environment is just as important for children as it is for adults. That carries on through their teen years, into their college years and into university. You've got to respect them, make them proud of where they are, invest in those facilities. The curriculum needs to be broadened. I teach geography. I'm considered an EBAC subject. This was a Michael Gove initiative. But even I don't want all the children in my room doing geography GCSE. I want the ones that are passionate about it. I don't want children sat with me for 2 years doing a GCSE they don't want to be doing. I want them to follow their passion. And when I came into teaching in 2010, they were still able to do that. Michael Gove took so many of the options away. It's narrowed it, it's taken the love of learning away from our young people. We've got to broaden it. We've got to let them follow what they want to do. Obviously, they need the key skills as well. They'll have to remain, but we've got to do that. And then finally, the next two bits are once they're making that next leap up in life, they've got to want to stay here. I chose to stay, try and improve things in my hometown, work at my school that I went to, and that's a real passion. I want more people to stay. We've got to create the jobs. The green economy is the very, very clear front runner in South Dorset. We've got the engineering base. We can move people that were previously MOD-based engineers in wide areas across South Dorset. Those skills are still there. They can bring our youth on, move that engineering skill base into new areas. Thank you.
Okay, probably very nicely timed as our next question is on the climate. So the next question comes from Kathy Hollidge. Would you support a cross-party initiative to tackle the issues of climate change and loss of biodiversity? If not, why not? Let's start with Giovanna.
Well, of course I will. It would be fantastic, wouldn't it? But currently, the way politics is run, they're all vying against each other and not working together. Maybe after the election, they will. But we've got to get money out of the equation. There's too much big business involved in destroying our planet. We don't need any more new oil fields. We need investment in renewable energy. We've got, how much coastline have we got here in tidal capacity? I mean, it's just, anyway. So, yes, I would definitely support that. You might know, or you might not know, that I have been a frontline climate and justice campaigner. I've got into trouble for telling the governments what they should do, and probably after this I'll be back out doing it again with some of my pals. But definitely I would support that initiative. There's so much that we need to do. Last year, 40 degrees centigrade we breached in the UK for the first, I could swear, for the first time. And this Tory government, I don't know what you lot are doing about the oil, Lloyd, you can tell me later. But this Tory government giving out oil field licences is absolutely shocking. We've had 12 months of the highest temperatures recorded in the UK, consistently, all through the winter, last autumn. If we don't do something about global warming, it's biting us in the back now. Temperatures predicted 2.7 degrees at the end of this century. This stuff about 1.5, let's stay within 1.5, it's a joke. If you hear any politician say it, just know that he doesn't know what he's talking about, or she.
Lloyd Hatton.
Thanks for the question, Kathy. I mean, first of all, I think it's incumbent on us all to work together to fight this. It is the biggest issue of our time, and I think my generation will perhaps feel this more acutely than any other. I think, and I imagine everybody here on the panel will agree with me, it is perhaps no surprise that the two parties that don't take the climate crisis seriously are not here this evening. And that is the Conservatives and Reform. They're not here to answer your questions, we are. And I think that shows straight away there are politicians that are willing to work together and to be the grown-ups in the room. Now, if we are fortunate enough to have a Labour government, we've been very clear, we will not push the net zero target ever into the future, as Rishi Sunak has. We will reach clean, green, homegrown energy by the end of this decade, and I don't think that should be pushed further into the future. Labour have put forward a bold plan for a publicly owned green energy company, GB Energy. We want to switch that on so we can start to produce clean energy in every community, not just in the ones that are already producing it, but every community. That must include South Dorset. And of course, and in answer to the point Giovanna made, we don't want to be issuing new oil and gas licences. We don't need to if we're meant to be reaching clean energy by the end of this decade. It's a very bold proposal. It's one I back wholeheartedly. And I think this is perhaps one of the biggest dividing lines at this election. If we give Richard Drax and the Conservatives another 5 years, they will not take this crisis seriously. If we're fortunate enough to have a Labour government, and I'm even more fortunate to be your local Member of Parliament, we will take this crisis seriously, and we can finally begin to tackle the greatest challenge of our times.
Matt Bell.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the panel, because we had this question the other evening and there was consensus, and it shows that if we get the right politicians around a table, we can make progress on this. We've also had Giovanna outline a lot of the facts around it. My degree was in geography and primarily in the Quaternary, which is basically the climate of the last 2.6 million years. So it's what I spend my day-to-day talking to people about and enthusing young people about. We also pushing the renewable agenda, free insulation in houses, heat pumps for those on low incomes, new solar and wind power, ban on fracking, ban on new coal mines such as the one proposed in Cumbria. So yes, a cross-party group can work. My party is very proud to fight the battle for climate change on a regular basis, and we stick with it. It's always in there and it's part of being a Lib Dem. Beyond that, with the climate change, we've obviously got the wider natural picture. We want to rewild. We want to plant 60 million trees a year. We want to bring nature back. We want to bring back a pride in nature, which then evolves into a care for nature. So there's so many elements to this. You've heard there's widespread agreement on this panel, but we all know that the two parties aren't here, will ignore this issue. So I'm very proud to be part of a party that keep this on the agenda, keep talking about it, and are very proud of that fact that we want to do everything we can to bring an end to climate change. Thank you.
Joy Wilson.
Thank you. Despite my colleagues here saying that there's widespread agreement on the panel, there isn't, and I don't agree that climate change, I agree it's a big concern to everybody, but it is not the biggest issue of our time. You can guess what I'm going to say. It is abortion, which has killed 72 million. It kills 72 million people a year. That has to be the biggest issue of our time. And also, as Christians, we should be trusting God with the future. God is in control. And what if he is judging us by allowing what is happening? God is God, we're not. We should trust him with the future. That's my position. Thank you.
Rosie Morrell.
Worldwide abortion figures.
So, yeah, it's a great question, and it's something that needs to change. Everyone God is always up for working together. That is very, very important. So we need to, one, make the economy more efficient so we can build the infrastructure across Britain to make going green 100% viable and affordable. We also, I was looking at the data today. You know, it's actually a bit embarrassing. We're a highly economically developed country, and we are 44% close to net zero. So there's countries such as African countries, Albania, that are 100% at net zero above us. And why is that? We could actually use the current infrastructure. My partner, Marcus, who is the leader of the party, he has a degree in physics and has been studying this. We could use the current infrastructure to use renewables. The problem with the renewables is they're unreliable. So what we need to do is save the energy from our renewables, the wind and the solar, and harness that energy. How can we harness that energy? We can use hydrogen power. This won't be it's zero carbon. A lot of the countries that are zero carbon, some of them are using either hydro or hydrogen power, which can mean that it's zero. There is zero carbon. So we need to look into doing this and working together to work out how we can solve this problem in 2024.
Catherine Bennett.
Right, I've got a lot to say very quickly. So, yes, of course I would agree with cross-party initiative, although I fear that if we don't have proportional representation in a different system, we'll just keep our adversarial position and go swinging between mainly Conservatives but occasionally Labour. Yes, I would love it if we had more voices in Parliament and we could genuinely have a bit more consensus politics. I will say that, Lloyd is agreeing with our policies on the green economy and the investment and the infrastructure that will come with that, and the jobs that will come with that, and the prosperity that will come with that, as well as the clean air and better living conditions for everybody. Matt's talking about investing in schools and changing education. That's it as part of it as well. A lot of the policies we're agreeing on, I just will say that Green's role is to push the big parties to do better, to go further. And that's exactly what the manifesto does. So I'm expecting big things from the Lib Dems. Now they are in charge of Dorset Council, and hopefully they will take seriously their biodiversity strategies and also any declaration about the climate crisis. And see if I can read my own writing. Matt's talking about insulation as well. That's a big 29 billion programme that the Greens are talking about rolling out so that all houses are retrofitted or newly built have to have these levels of insulation. There's so much that can happen. And just to pick up on your point there about renewables being unreliable, you need to look at what's happening in France at the moment. They're actually starting to decommission nuclear stations because they're showing that their renewables are proving incredibly reliable and are producing all the electricity that they need. So I think the answer to that is that's kind of maybe not the research that's proving correct now, and that we can accept that they are working, they are doable. We just need to get on and do it and stop talking about it like we've been doing since the 70s.
So the next question is on a rather bigger scale, possibly more thinking of the economy and our engagement with the EU. This question is from James Mercer. So the calculations would imply that Brexit is costing the UK economy £100 billion a year. What is your view on engaging with the EU to restore and promote creative, cultural and economic initiatives? Thank you.
Catherine Bennett.
Right, here we go. Yeah, Brexit really has been the elephant in the room this whole election, really, because when we're talking about migration, people aren't understanding a lot of the issues are based on the fact that we don't have these reciprocal agreements anymore with France and other countries in the EU. So there's no that movement of people that was possible for people looking for work, but it was also possible with migration, and we just don't have those chances. Although people are saying send the boats back, you can't. They can't just literally turn them away. They are coming here because we don't have that system that we had within the EU. When we look at our economy, I didn't vote for Brexit because I'm an economist and I knew it would be disastrous. We have created huge problems for ourselves, and I'm sure we will spend quite a lot of decades kind of undoing and unravelling those. The Green Party seem to be the only ones that are saying that the long-term aim, I don't think the Lib Dems are, true, right, we are. We're saying that we want to go back into the EU, or at least be part of that sort of family of nations, be part of, particularly of the common market, because we are frankly a bit stuffed without that. We know there isn't the political will to go for that straight away, but what we do need is we need to have conversations about migration so that we can actually resolve some of those issues, and we need to try and maybe get ourselves back in the common market at least, so that we have all those trade arrangements and all those benefits that we had from it. I know not everyone will agree, but I'm being honest.
Rosie Morrell.
So the economy, as I've said many times before, needs to be more efficient. We need to. That is a serious problem that it can take time to, but there is a plan for it, and our policies are online at www. Everyone has got to look if you want to look up that. And also, this may seem like an unusual and more holistic answer. If people are following their heart and not following their lack for consumerism, this will help the economy. It not only helps a greener climate, it also helps the economy. And so we also have a following your heart policy, and actually looking at why we've got massive problems in the economy anyway. For example, like the trading between countries. We want to change all of that, and ultimately what would really need to happen, but this is a long way away, and I've done a lot of reading around politics. If there was one like world leader, which I know sounds a bit dramatic, but that would mean that we could have, all cultures can stay being their same culture, but it would stop all this unfair trade, which can affect economics massively, and the food problems and all of this kind of stuff. So it sounds a bit out there, but like Catherine, I speak from my heart, so there we go.
Joy Wilson.
Thank you. I would say that we should, as Christians, do to others as we would have them do to ourselves. It's a biblical principle we should all support. Yet under the Conservative rule, this last government, we have corrupted it by tying abortion to our foreign aid packages. We shouldn't kill our own babies, and we certainly shouldn't be coercing foreign nations to kill theirs. As one Ugandan nurse said, the UK, oh, that's the country that kills its babies. Vote Life would defund foreign aid abortions. Thank you.
Matt Bell.
Thank you very much. Catherine's absolutely right to point out that the Lib Dems are proudly talking about building that bond with Europe again. Thank you to the questioner for raising many of the key points around the problems that have occurred since. We realise we can't just flick a switch and go back into the EU tomorrow, so it's all about the steps building back to a closer relationship. So the first one is to start communicating better with our near neighbours, build those cooperation channels on things like foreign policy. Rejoin or reinitiate some organisations like the European Aviation Agency, Erasmus+, something that many students benefited from, travelling abroad to study, incredible opportunity for young people. Scientific programmes and the funding, climate and environment initiatives, cooperation on defence, security, crime, and then starting to build into the trade relationship with the eventual aim of rejoining the European single market. They are one of the world's biggest trading blocs. They're on our doorstep, and we're turning down those opportunities. We've experimented with Brexit. Jacob Rees-Mogg is somewhere in North Dorset looking for Brexit benefits still. So we've got to have a look at this again. We've got to have a sensible discussion. It's been 8 years since the referendum. My party is proudly saying, let's rebuild that relationship and head back into the single market. Thank you.
Lloyd Hatton.
Thanks. It's a really important question, and you're right, James. It's probably one that we're not talking about enough. Which is why I'm a little bit worried about what Matt just said, that the Liberal Democrats are talking about this. I think we need to go a bit further than talking about this. I think we need a Labour government that is proudly internationalist and willing to take the Brexit problem seriously. Both Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves have been really clear. The deal that was struck by Boris Johnson is not good. It is not good for trade, it is not good for young people, it is not good for investment. We will need to look at that deal and make sure that Britain isn't permanently at an economic disadvantage. I don't want to see endless trade barriers. I do not want to see young people denied the opportunities that I had when I was growing up. So I think that is something that a Labour government will crack on with straight away. Secondly, on a broader point, we need to be an outward-looking internationalist country. If I'm fortunate enough to work with a Labour government, I will always be an internationalist. We will always have to work with our European friends and allies, whether that is the conflict in Ukraine, the conflict in the Middle East, the refugee crisis, climate change, or the fact that we basically have a stalemate on the Northern Ireland border. The last Labour government delivered the Good Friday Agreement. I want to make sure that the next Labour government safeguards the Good Friday Agreement. If Brexit is something we don't talk about enough, what is going on in Northern Ireland at the moment I think is even more perilous. And it's up to us to make sure that we revisit the mistakes of Boris Johnson's deal and finally look boldly and proudly out onto the world stage and say we're ready to work with you again.
Giovanna Lewis.
As somebody who's half Italian, I would look forward to lots of things that we could do together more. We have to, don't we? I mean, whatever legal agreements have got, we've got to be creative, clever, and we've got to merge more, do more together, but we also have to do that with the wider world, not just Europe. We have pretty much been stitched up by the right wing in this country with the Brexit stuff. They're trying to do it to us now with the immigration stuff. Let's not listen to them, shall we? So, there's just one thing I would like, and that is for Europe to deal with Palestine. I see what's her name, von der Leyen, and she gives me the jitters. So if we go closer to Europe, let's get stronger and sort out what's going on in Palestine. Thank you.
Okay, we're actually starting to run out of time, so we haven't spoken about this, but closing statements. Would you like to do a closing statement, everyone? With about 90 seconds? Does that sound? I mean, obviously you may not have something prepared, but that's what we want from you. So.
Simple as that.
Let's start with Lloyd Hatton.
Great. Well, it's been fantastic to join you here this evening at the hustings in Swanage. We've had a really engaging debate. I think we've sort of answered questions, I hope, directly on some of the biggest challenges facing both South Dorset and the country. But I suppose we have to remember that there is a straight choice at this general election, and that is between 5 more years of the same or a fresh start with a Labour government. Now, do we want to be on the outside looking in if there is a Labour government, or do we want to be sending a Labour MP that will work with that government? Do we want a seat and a voice at the top table? We know the difference we can have here when we have a Labour MP. We used to have Jim Knight as our MP. He delivered the Olympic Games here in Weymouth with the sailing events. He delivered a new relief road. He built Sure Start centres. He rebuilt my primary school and my secondary school. He delivered record investment in our National Health Service. That is the difference of a Labour MP working hand in hand with a Labour government. We have a big decision to make next Thursday. If you can elect me as your hard-working, constituency-based MP, I will work with a Labour government to deliver from day one for our community. Thank you.
Joy Wilson.
Thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you for taking the time to be interested in politics. And I would say to you all that you should ask yourself a question this election before you vote. Am I about to vote for a party or a candidate who support the intentional killing of 250,000 babies a year? And be aware that the laws are about to change, which could increase abortion up to birth or even beyond birth. So just think about what really do your candidates stand for. And consider this, we are facing the greatest international mass killing in the history of humanity. Worldwide, the death toll from abortion dwarfs all wars, or the Holocaust, or genocides combined. So 70 million a year. It's not a statistic. The unborn babies are not clumps of cells. If they could be here, they'd want me to tell you they're just real people. They just need to be given chance. They're precious, and they be given chance of life. The woman's womb should not be the most dangerous place in the universe. It should be the safest. Thank you.
Giovanna Lewis.
Yeah, thank you. So it's been really interesting being here, listening to these guys, and in lots of places we think the same, but a few we don't. And thank you for coming here and listening to us. Hope we haven't bored you silly. So I just want to say, as a socialist, I want to see a world of sharing and a country of sharing, fairness and kindness. I want those with lots to kind of let go of some of that, or perhaps they've got to be made to let go of some of that and share it around a bit so that we don't have the poverty and the deprivation and the hunger that we live with now. I want our politicians to tell the truth. The IFS have said all the promises that the two big parties are making, where's their money coming from? We're either going to be in lots of debt or they have to put the tax up. Come on, let's get real. A lot of people don't mind paying a bit more tax if it means they can get a doctor's appointment, this, that and the other. But we live in a society where somehow that's like, we can't say it. You know, it's a terrible thing to say. So let's get honest, let's get truthful. Take the competition out and let's work together, please. And one last thing, I'm really, really sad that Gaza and Palestine haven't been mentioned here because it's one of the biggest issues in global politics and it does affect all of us. But there we go. Thank you.
Catherine Bennett.
Hello. Right. Well, I'm really glad to see there's quite a lot of alignment on policies around infrastructure, around housing, around the environment, around investing in that, hopefully in public transport, all these factors that are in the Green Manifesto. We need to spend billions. That is just honesty. And we do want integrity and honesty in our politics. And we want those different voices that are prepared to say things because they aren't going to be in government. And they can get away with saying what is really needed. So we do need that, 50 billion in electricity generation, 50 billion retrofitting all the buildings and with new non-fossil heating. We need active travel to be invested in, which is, road, cycleways, pathways. We need to bring back our main companies, whether that's water, whether that's electric companies, and all those key energy companies to come back into our public purse, and we need to get the railways back in as well. I think that we all want a change and we want hope, and that is what the Green Party will push for.
Matt Bell.
Thank you very much for coming this evening, especially on such a hot evening. I'm really, really pleased to see that democracy is fitting well across South Dorset. and we've got another hustings coming up on Portland in a couple of days' time. Thank you for all the excellent and detailed questions, many outlining a lot of the facts as a basis for the questions, so we've had some really healthy discussion tonight. The Lib Dem manifesto is unapologetically big and bold. It is different to the two main parties in Westminster. We don't apologise for that. We see that there's a dramatic need for change. We want to make sure that there's access to doctors, that social care works as the first step, not the recovery point after the NHS fails to cover all the situations. Social care needs to be there at the heart of everything we do. We have big, bold plans for education, to widen the curriculum, to bring back that love of learning, to invest in our schools, to make per-head funding above inflation for education over the length of the next Parliament. Fixing the social care crisis. Working to end the sewage crisis that does blight South Dorset. We've got near Olwell, we've got the sewage release there, Portland, Weymouth. It's all across the area. It's my party that's led the way on that. Also, the Lib Dems are the biggest party in Parliament who have been consistently calling for a ceasefire, an end to the war in Gaza. And I'm very glad that Giovanna brought that up. It is a key issue. And if anyone would like to discuss our position on that afterwards, I'd very much welcome that. Thank you very much.
Rosie Morrell.
So thank you again for listening to all of us, and I feel really privileged to be here, and I want you all to really not vote tactically if you can, vote with your hearts. Even if you don't vote for me, that's fine, because I'm really passionate about people voting with what is true for them, not because they want to vote tactically. And this is a movement. Our party, like I've said, is radical, okay? We really want to solve all these major problems and stop them reoccurring. And it is, for me, it's like one of the most famous minority movements in history, the suffragette movement. If the suffragette movement didn't start just over 100 years ago, it literally started. If that didn't start, I wouldn't be here, and pretty much a lot of you guys wouldn't be here today, because the women didn't have the vote and working men didn't have the vote. And so if we want radical change to happen and really stop all of these problems of poverty and climate change and crime, and really get to the root of these problems, I would say vote for a party that can bring about those changes. And please take a look at our website, www.everyoneisgod.co.uk, and we've got all 30 policies to address those issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all of you, to all the candidates. Best luck to all of you next Thursday. Thank you to Emmanuel Baptist Church for hosting us, and to everyone who submitted questions. As I stated at the beginning, we'll be passing all of those questions to the candidates. We'll let you know of any responses that come back via us. And yes, thank you to Joe and Gemma and everyone else who helped to organise.